Recording in progress.
The hour of 6:30 PM having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Board. The meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the home page and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will the staff please conduct the roll?
Pamela Russell Slack,
Present.
David Orgaz,
Present.
Mayor George Hansel,
Here.
Councilor Mike Remy,
Here.
Harold Farrington, Roberta Mastrogiovanni, Armando Rangel,
Here.
Emily Levine Bernier, Gail Summers, Randon Markelon,
Here.
Tammy Adams, and Kenneth Cost.
Here.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from January 23rd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to adopt the minutes of the January 23rd meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Remy. Are there any questions, comments, or any changes? All in favor? Thank you. So there is a vote tonight, a final vote on the conditional approvals. And this, I'm just going to repeat this because this is new to everybody, that this is a new standing agenda item in response to the recent City of Dover decision issued by the New Hampshire Supreme Court. As a matter of practice, the board will now issue a final vote on all conditionally approved plans after all of the conditions precedent have been met. This final vote will be the final approval and will start the 30-day appeal clock. Are there any applications tonight that are ready for a final vote?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. We do have one application that's ready for a final vote. This is a subdivision and boundary line adjustment application for 22 and 24 Rural Street. It's project number S-11-22. There were 5 conditions of approval, which included the submittal of the paper copies and Mylar copies of the plans, the submittal of a check to cover the cost of recording the final plat at the Registry of Deeds, the removal and relocation of the existing, or sorry, just the removal of the existing carport and the relocation or removal of the existing shed on the property at 24 Rural Street, inspection of lot monuments by the Public Works Director or their designee, and then submittal of a revised plat to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds that includes the City of Keene Development Standard notes shown on sheet 1 of the plan set. So all of those conditions have been met.
Thank you. Is there a motion to issue a final approval for S-11-22?
I would move. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Remy. Is there any discussion or any edits? All in favor? Thank you. The first item on the agenda is an extension request for EXP-01-22 and CUHP-01-22 earth excavation permit, gravel pit 0 Route 9. Applicant Granite Engineering LLC, on behalf of owner GT Holdings LLC, requests an extension to the deadline to satisfy the precedent conditions of approval for the earth excavation permit and hillside protection conditional use permit, EXP-01-22 and CUHP-01-22 for the proposed operation of a gravel pit on the property at 0 Route 9, tax map number 215007-000. The parcel is 84.71 acres and is located in the rural district. So I will invite the applicant to speak, and if you could give your full name, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is James Callahan. I'm a lawyer from Peterborough representing G2 Holdings LLC. I'm here with Brent Cole from Granite Engineering and his colleague Tanner Baylor, also here is one of the principals of G2 Holding. Cody Gordon, who's in the back. As he said, we're here to ask for 180-day extension of the August 22nd, 2022 conditional approval for earth excavation and hillside protection conditional use permit on behalf of G2 Holdings. I just want to note for the record that since that application was approved conditionally back in August, the applicant has changed its engineering consultants. So there was a little bit of a delay related to that, but I think we're in good shape now. So I'm going to turn it over to Brent Cole to talk about some of the specific technical items addressed in the conditional approval letter from last August.
So, good evening, board. My name is Brent. The conditions that were put forward, we have addressed all of them with the exception of two. The two items that are still on the list are the restoration of the wetland buffer impacts that were not permitted, as well as the security deposit for the reclamation of the site once it's completed. The restoration of the unpermitted wetland impacts, as you can imagine, we've got to get seed, we've got to get loam down, and there was an extensive tree planting plan that was put forward. The Gordons have done those services. They've put the trees in, they've loamed, they've seeded. However, we get this thing in the winter called snow that kind of buried the site quite a bit and prevented the ability to get a proper inspection in, probably prevented the ability to get proper growth out there. Really, you'd want to see about 75% establishment on that area with grass to really prevent erosion. And I can't imagine the city engineer signing off on anything less than 75%. It's just a challenging thing to do in these kind of conditions. So that is the main item that I would say kind of leaves the need to get this extension tonight that isn't fulfilled. I'll hand it back to the attorney to kind of explain the security deposit.
Yep, so I've been working with the applicant and one of Mr. Gordon's partners to have a letter of credit issued by JP Morgan Chase. Mr. Gordon's partner is out in the West Coast, so he's working with a private banking group out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been working with the city attorney to get the language of the letter of credit ironed out. There's been a little bit of back and forth on that. And as of today, I submitted a draft to the city that was approved by the city attorney, and now it has to be approved internally by JP Morgan Chase. Hopefully that's going to come quickly, but in the meantime, if there's any delay in having that letter of credit issued for the benefit of the city, Mr. Gordon's partner is willing to put up cash security on a temporary basis until the letter of credit's issued. So we've made a lot of progress in this regard.
The thing that I would like to talk to the board about tonight is the amendment to the condition that I spoke about before, that restoration to the wetland buffer impact. As I mentioned, it is quite difficult to get something established to 75 or 100% in these conditions. We're probably not talking about getting that established into the perfect situation that the city engineer signs off on until, June timeframe. So what we're requesting tonight is that condition be amended to allow the city engineer and my firm to work that out subsequent to final approval with a letter from my firm, a professional engineer, and a wetland scientist assuring that everything was done per plan and for the city engineer to sign off on it. Basically, allow me and the city engineer to work with it outside of this board and allow Gordon Services to begin operations out there. They've started, they have a landing area, and they've brought material in from other places to store that material because it's a nice wide landing area. They're not allowed to remove that material, and rightfully so. They're not allowed to be up there operating. But they have all this material that they brought in from other sites that they basically can't get at this point. So there's some ability for them to actually operate their business and allow an engineer to an engineer to kind of work it out outside of the board. That's kind of what we're requesting tonight and seeing what you guys would be willing to amend.
Madam Chair, may I interject?
Yeah,
So, under the planning board's regulations regarding extension requests, an extension only is allowed to be for the plan that was conditionally approved by the board with no amendments to it. Unfortunately, what's being proposed tonight is not allowed under our regulations. Specifically, it says that no modifications to the approved or conditionally approved plan shall be considered in conjunction with a request to extend the deadline. However, if the applicant wishes to, after you receive the extension, you could come back at a future meeting to request a modification to the approved plan.
Sounds fair. Thank you.
thank you, Mary. Are you all set with your presentation, both of you?
I am.
Aye.
It would be advantageous to at least know how you felt about that. Just so it may prevent us from coming back here, it may prevent us, or it may allow us an opportunity to talk about something different. I don't know if this board has the ability tonight to at least talk openly about the possible amendment and what their concerns may be, or how we could word it. I don't know if staff could weigh in on what their abilities are.
So I would recommend that you keep your discussion tonight just
Okay.
to the extension request and come back at a later date with the amendment.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions? Or, do you have a question, Mayor Ham? Oh, Counselor Remy.
Thank you. Not specific to the application, but for our group here, as far as, we have some alternates that are here, I think.
Yeah.
You're an alternate. You didn't vote on the last thing, which is why I was concerned. Are they
No.
both pulled up to vote or
No.
not? Okay. That was what I was trying to clarify.
Okay, thanks. Mayor Hansel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, to be clear with the current state, the work has been done, the loams have been put out there, and it's been seeded, but just hasn't had a chance to grow yet. Is that the bottom line?
That is correct.
Okay.
The 34 trees have been planted. We just haven't had a growing season.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. So is there a motion to approve this request?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve the applicant's extension request for EXP-01-22 and CUHP-01-22.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other discussion or comments? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board.
You're very welcome. The second item on the agenda is an extension request, another extension request for S-08-22, two-lot subdivision, 284-288 Hurricane Road. Property owner Corey Graves requests an extension to the deadline to satisfy the precedent conditions of approval for the two-lot subdivision, S-0-22 of the property at 284 to 288 Hurricane Road, tax map number 106010-000. The parcel is 13.04 acres and is located in the rural district. I invite the applicant to speak. Uh-oh.
So, Madam Chair, I believe that this extension request was submitted to allow for more time for the affidavit to be signed. If the board will recall, when this project came before you, it was a two-lot subdivision proposed, and during the public hearing, some of the neighboring property owners came out and brought up a right-of-way that ran across the property that was not shown on the plan. And so there was a condition of approval that was added, that the right-of-way be shown on the plan and that an affidavit be signed by both property owners, that it was in the right location. The applicant is still working on getting that affidavit signed by both parties. Because one of them, it has been out of state, it's just been tricky to get them both signed at the same time. So I believe this was just for that one condition that's still outstanding.
Do the board members have any questions for staff? Or, I mean, there's no one here to talk about it, so you did, so I'm assuming that it's all right to move forward with a motion.
Yes, we tell the, when a first extension request is submitted, we encourage the applicant to come, but we've told them it wasn't required for the first extension request.
Okay. So, is there a motion to approve this request?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to approve the extension request for S-08-22.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, any comments? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mary. The third item on the agenda is another extension request for SPR-870, modification number 2, site plan apartments 310 Marlborough Street. Applicant and property owner Randall Walker requests an extension to the deadline to satisfy the precedent conditions of approval for the major site plan application, SPR-870, modification number 2, for the proposed construction of a 48,460 square foot, 3-story addition containing 57 apartments on the existing 86,689 square foot, 2-story building, and associated site modifications on the property at 310 Marlborough Street, tax map number 595-001-000. The parcel is 4.25 acres and is located in the Business Growth and Reuse District. Is there an applicant here to speak to this request?
Good evening, Randall Walter, 310 Marlborough Street. Pretty simply, we've made great progress since the last time we were here. We've developed a complete set of permit documents. We've met with city staff, we've met with the Department of Public Works, and we simply feel at this point we just need a little bit more time. I understand the application is for 6 months of extension. I would have been happy with a month and a half or 6 weeks, but if that's the standard, so be it. We'll be here with our conditions precedent to be approved probably the next meeting. But we can't make quite the deadline we had, so. Certain engineers are a little behind schedule, but we won't name names.
No, we won't. Do board members have any questions for him or for staff? Okay, is there a motion to approve this request?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to approve the extension request for SBR-870, modification number 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Remy. Is there any further discussion or any other comments? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The first public hearing on the agenda is SPR-01-23, the site plan for Granite State Car Wash, 364 West Street and 12 Pearl Street. Applicant Aaron Weiswell, on behalf of owner Sandry Realty, proposes to demolish the existing structures on the properties located at 364 West Street, tax map number 577-026-000, and 12 Pearl Street, tax map number 577-027-000. Merge the lots and construct a 2-bay car wash that is 2,000 square foot in size. Waivers are requested from section 20.7.3.f.1.c of the Land Development Code regarding the requirement to reduce lighting levels by 50% overnight, and section 20.6.2.b.1 regarding the requirement that drive-through windows and lanes shall not be located along the building frontage. The combined parcels are 0.60 acres and are located in the Commerce District. Does staff have recommendation for completeness of the application?
I do, Madam Chair. The applicant requests exemptions from submitting a historic evaluation, screening analysis, and soils analysis. After reviewing each request, staff has determined that exempting the applicant from submitting this information would have no bearing on the merits of the application and recommends that the planning board grant these exceptions and accept the application as complete.
Thank you. Motion to accept the application is complete.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to find the application complete.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? I invite you, Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Jim Thippard. I'm with Brickstone Land Use Consultants. I'm here tonight on behalf of Aaron Wiswell, the applicant, and I'm also representing Sandry Realty, Inc., who is the current owner of the property. Aaron and his partner, Bob Brennan, are proposing to purchase two properties located at the corner of Pearl Street and West Street. West Street is here at the top of the page. Pearl Street is here on the left side. The two properties involved are the former Sandry Realty property, which was a gas station. Currently, it's an auto detailing shop. The canopy is still in place, and there's a building located here where they do the detailing. The second property is a single-family residence, which has been condemned and is not in good repair. So it's really kind of an unpleasant corner at this corner of Pearl Street and West Street. This is going to be a good effort to clean it all up. Proposal is to tear down the single-family house, tear down the detailing shop and the canopy, remove the underground storage tanks, which I think most of them have been removed already, and then to merge the two properties. When they merge the two properties, we'll end up with a single lot, 0.61 acres in size, in the Commerce District. And this is just a colored version of the proposed plan that's in your submittal package. We are proposing to eliminate the existing curb cuts that are pretty wide open all along the West Street frontage. And we would eliminate a curb cut here on Pearl Street, and we're eliminating a curb cut to the single-family residence. We would replace all those curb cuts with a single curb cut on Pearl Street, located about 125 feet back from the intersection with West Street. We see that as a tremendous improvement safety-wise. You're no longer going to have cars entering and exiting the property at West Street, so that's going to reduce the potential conflicts, especially with left turns crossing 2 or 3 lanes to get in to go to the west. On Pearl Street, by consolidating those 2 curb cuts into one, we'll have a single access point that's much easier to control, much safer to control for the customers who are proposing to use the property. We're proposing to construct a new 2,000 square foot building located near the West Street side of the property that would be a 2-bay car wash. These are automated wash bays that they're proposing. So we would introduce stacking lanes to approach the car wash from the Pearl Street side, into the tunnels. You exit through the same curb cut back to Pearl Street. So we feel it's a great improvement in the circulation on the properties and for public access into and out of the site, much safer. Today, with curb cuts here, there's often a conflict between cars waiting to get onto West Street, stacking on Pearl Street. So this is going to correct that situation in almost every circumstance. We worked with our traffic engineer, Steve Pernaugh, who has approved of our proposal for this traffic circulation and especially the location of the curb cuts. He did a detailed traffic analysis of the intersection at West Street and Pearl Street. And I know West Street's been studied, I don't know how many times, 12 times over the years since I've been in business. And West Street is one of the most heavily traveled streets in the city of Keene, which is what makes this a prime commercial location, especially for a business that's relying on pass-by traffic. So they're very pleased to get control of this property. The traffic analysis, it's kind of interesting. It's changed a lot over the years. When I started back in 1977, you couldn't do traffic studies in the winter time because you couldn't put tubes out. The tubes would get ripped up by the snow plows plowing in the winter. So if you tried it with tubes, you were lucky if you could get enough data to be able to use it. So other than physically sitting out there and counting cars, you had to wait until warmer weather. Today, it's entirely different. Now they can put out video cameras that record all the turning movements and cars going by. You can identify trucks versus cars. You can identify the numbers of vehicles queuing, and it takes all that data and sends it either by cellular or Wi-Fi to the computer in the traffic engineer's office, and it collects all that data and breaks it down for them. It's just amazing to see the difference. So it doesn't matter the time of year any longer. You don't need the tubes any longer, and it's very accurate because it's all recorded, and the software they use recognize the vehicles. So I find that very interesting, and to see the changes that have occurred over the years. So what they determined was the existing intersection today operates at level of service E, and that's no surprise, so it's near failure. Many of the intersections along West Street are that way, and that's what you get when you have the heaviest traveled street in the city. Intersections approaching that end up with long delays during peak hours before they can enter, especially to do left turns. And the longest delay that they measured during their 5-day period was a little over 2 minutes for a car on Pearl Street. And it started waiting in a queue, and it was 2 minutes and 5 seconds before it was able to get to West Street and turn left. So that's why that level of service is so low as an E. We looked at the traffic that would be introduced by a new business at this location, and we didn't subtract or try to balance based on the old gas station use. We looked at this as a vacant lot and a new use, and the number of vehicle trips that would be generated during the peak hours by that use. And the numbers aren't high during the week. The highest number of trips generated would be on a Saturday midday when most people aren't working and they can take time to go out to try to wash their cars. And they looked at 61 vehicles trips during the peak hour. So that means 31 vehicles turning into the site and 30 vehicles leaving. It's not 61 cars, it's really half of that number. So the car wash technology has changed tremendously, even in the last 5 years. I've done a lot of car wash site plans, most recently Mint Car Wash down on Lower Winchester Street that I think you're familiar with and may recall. They now can wash a car in about 4.5 minutes, which is much faster than it used to be in the old days. In the old days, we used to use 70 gallons of water for an average car wash, and now that's been cut in half. It's down to 35 gallons per day, per wash. So this is a big improvement. They're not wasting water. They're no longer proposing to recycle rinse water. They did for a few years, and what they determined was that they couldn't filter the water good enough to remove all the suspended solids. And when they used high pressure spraying the suspended solids on today's high gloss finishes, it was ruining the finishes. So there were lawsuits brought against car washes across the country. They have a membership and they issue reports and data, and most car wash owners subscribe to that. So they learn very quickly, we're not gonna salvage rinse water anymore. We're not gonna recycle it. So that water gets wasted. It doesn't go into the stormwater system. That water is collected. There'll be an underground 1,500 gallon tank on site, which is an oil water separator. It runs through the separator to remove most of the suspended solids from product washed off cars. And then it goes into the city sewer system. It doesn't go into the stormwater system. So it's then treated by the city. And obviously they pay the fees for the water usage and the sewer usage. We have had communication with the Industrial Stormwater Discharge Coordinator to review the products that they use, the soaps that they use, the waxes that they use, so that the city has the ability, they know they can address that in the sewage flow. So all that is addressed. I did apply for 2 waivers, as staff pointed out. One is to allow the drive-through lanes to pass across the front of the building. And if you look at this plan, you can see why we proposed that. It would have been easy to turn the building 90 degrees and let them come in and drive through the building and exit to West Street. But we were anxious not to allow that interaction at West Street. We wanted to remove all traffic movements in and out of the site from the West Street curb cut. And our traffic engineer felt strongly that that was the best way to handle this and to improve safety. So we oriented the building back to Pearl Street, but we didn't want the curb cut this close to the intersection. So we moved the curb cut out here. So now the drive-through lane has to cross the front of the building to get back to that curb cut location. So that's what led us to apply for that waiver. The second waiver that we applied for is lighting. And I have an amended lighting plan that I did submit to staff. And these are the outlines of the foot candle footprints on the property, and I think most of you are familiar with that. We're proposing 4 overhead lights that would be located on 15-foot poles, so they're not really high, like a lot of commercial shopping centers, for example. Most of those light poles we use are 30 feet high. These are 15 feet high. And we are using very low wattage LED fixtures. And because of that, we end up with really low light levels. And when we do a lighting plan, I work with a lighting engineer out of Manchester, and Ken Sweeney is his name. If we have a lot of pedestrian activity on a commercial site, then we end up with higher light levels because of pedestrian safety. If they have to step over a curb or go up steps to get into a building, you want adequate light. And it's a liability issue for property owners to make sure we're addressing light levels appropriately. So here, because you arrive in your car, you stay in your car to get through the car wash tunnel, you may exit your car where we have the 2 vacuum stations located. But other than that, you're back in your car the whole time. So we can live with much lower light levels. The average light levels that we're proposing here, instead of 4 or 5 foot candles, we're proposing light levels of 1.12 foot candles and 1.32 foot candles at the vacuum station where they're getting in and out of their cars. So it's already a very low light level. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with foot candle readings. For example, in this room, I'm gonna guess the lighting levels are probably 30 foot candles under these lights. So 1 foot candle is a very low level of light. If you go to the property today, there are floodlights mounted on poles. It's not night sky sensitive. These are grandfathered fixtures. They're all gonna be removed. We're using full cutoff LED fixtures. Your regulations, this is proposed to operate 24 hours a day. And because of that, we have to leave the lights on. And we purposely created the low light levels, as I explained to you. Your regulations say if you're a 24-hour business, we want you to reduce the light levels by 50% after 10 o'clock at night. And we do not feel that that's safe or reasonable because we're already down very close to 1 foot candle. To reduce it to a half a foot candle, I think is unreasonable and causes an undue risk for the property owner and tremendously increases his liability. A lot of the properties that I've worked on, I've helped to manage for about 15 years through a property management company. And there's repeated lawsuits on commercial properties over the years, and we learned the hard way. And most of that involved slip and falls or tripping on the property. And it always came back to, was there adequate lighting at the areas where they were stepping down? Is that what contributed to the slip and fall? And regardless of how hard I argued that we had an approved plan that met the Institute of Electrical Engineers guidelines for lighting, the insurance companies always settled. So lighting is a big deal for commercial properties. And so I'm stressing that to you, that we don't want to lower light levels below 1 foot candle because it introduces an unreasonable risk for the owner. So I requested a waiver to let us leave the light levels. We're nearly at 1 foot candle already. And a lot of times, you know, at a shopping center, we're going from 5 foot candles down to 2 foot candles. And so this is already way less than that. So I think it's a reasonable request, and I hope you can support that. I had discussions with staff about screening. And because drive-through lanes are intended to be screened from public views and from adjacent properties, we're using 6-foot solid fencing along the southern property line and along the eastern property line. And this includes, part of this fencing is owned by this property, and part of it is the Aroma Joe's fencing, which is also owned by Aaron Wiswell and his partner. So they own both of these properties, and they're managing both of these properties. And I just want to make a comment here. I don't know if you've been observing the construction of the Aroma Joe's. It's a very small lot, but it's one of the cleanest construction sites I've ever worked on. I'm just amazed at how good a job they've done of keeping that clean, keeping it organized and safe. And I think it shows you what a good job these people do taking care of their properties. They own 105 Aroma Joe's. And I don't know how many car washes they own, but they own dozens of car washes in New Hampshire and in Maine and in Florida. And so these people are very experienced, and everything they've shown me is they do a great job. So I'm not worried about fencing being maintained on their properties. I know they'll do a good job of that. Along the West Street frontage, we're calling for hedgerows of plants. These are arborvitaes and rhododendron. So it's year-round screening. Rhododendron keep their leaves in the winter. And we're gonna do arborvitaes along Pearl Street. And also we're planting vegetation against the fence next to this residential building, which they are also purchasing, by the way. So this is a multifamily dwelling that they're gonna keep. They're renovating, and they're gonna improve that property as well. So these are good people to bring into Keene. I'm very proud to be representing them. So the screening, I think, staff agrees with us that this is now adequate to adequately screen the drive-through where it's visible from the public right-of-way, and especially from West Street. Drainage on the property. On the previous plan that you saw with the old house in this location and the gas station, everything around the gas station is already paved. Drainage, sheet drains, and enters into the city storm drain systems on West Street and Pearl Street. The house, there is a grassy area, but the driveway drains back into the street. So we're correcting all that. We're now collecting stormwater on the property. We're here, it's catch basins that are connected with perforated pipe laid in stone, infiltrating into the sandy soils that exist on the property. Excellent drainage here because of the sandy soils. And then we also have an area here, which is a stormwater basin for overflow from that system, and an additional infiltration area. At the front of the property, we're sheet draining to allow stormwater to pass through the grassy areas into a swale that will collect and deliver it to an infiltration area here at this corner of the property. So it's a tremendous improvement over what exists, and it provides these collection areas on-site rather than directing it into the city right-of-way. City engineer is very happy to see this when we showed it. The vacuums, concern was expressed by staff. We're locating 2 vacuum islands in these locations. Each vacuum can support vacuuming out 2 vehicles at the same time. And so 4 vacuum spaces that are serviced by those 2 machines. And these are the machines, you may have seen them. I don't know if there's any in Keene this way, but there's an arm, an elevated arm, and the hose hangs down. And that allows you to lift it over the car and clean both sides, rather than try to drag it through the car or around the car. Works much better for the people trying to vacuum their cars. There was concern about the noise levels. One of the reasons we located them here and not at an area in the back of the property is, these are residential uses. Even though all this area around this site is zone commerce, there's still residential buildings that front on Richardson Court, which is located here, and then down Pearl Street. So we felt we'll pull it back here, closer to West Street. This is not a residential use across the street, and that would kind of confine the noise to that end of the property. Then we'd use the plantings and the fencing to help buffer that noise. And then to further mitigate, they agreed to shut off the vacuums at 8 o'clock at night. So even though you can wash your car at midnight, you can't vacuum using one of these vacuums on site. So they'll operate from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. in the evening. And we feel that that's an adequate way to mitigate for the potential noise, especially in the evening hours. Sewer and water, as I addressed, we're using an oil and water separator that would be located here, underground, and would discharge into the existing sewer system on West Street. Water, they're hoping to average 100 car washes a day. And the only reason we're using that number, I asked them, give me data from your other car washes. And they're located all over the place, but Exeter and Rochester and Epping and in different municipalities throughout New Hampshire, they're only averaging about 60 car washes a day. And I don't know why it's lower. The Institute of Transportation Engineers suggest that a car wash is going to average more than that. But, and they'd be thrilled if they can get up to 100 car washes per day, but realistically, it's probably only going to be 60. Regardless, I use the 100 number, and at 35 gallons per wash, that's 3,500 gallons per day, which is not a big water user by commercial standards, and there's certainly plenty of capacity in the water system. We're going to be utilizing a water main on Pearl Street, which is a 16-inch main. That's a huge water main with plenty of capacity. And the residual pressure in that main is over 90 pounds per square inch. So there's plenty of capacity. It'll be a 1-inch line that'll come out and service inside the building. And the way they can get away with using a 1-inch line, even though they're operating a car wash, is there's also a water storage tank inside the mechanical room. So all they're doing is keeping that tank full, and the tank is what's feeding the washes. So there's not a need for a 2-inch or 3-inch water main to come into the building. Filling and excavation, all the soils on site are excellent soils, good sands, and as you go down deeper, it's gravel. So it couldn't be a better situation to support the building. There's no basement under the building, so they'll just be excavating for the foundation and hauling in gravels to support the paved surfaces on the property. It works out to a little less than 300 cubic yards of fill to be hauled in. There will be truckloads of debris hauled out when they tear the building down, but the demolition contractor is going to salvage everything he can out of those buildings, and then the rest will go to a construction landfill, which actually grinds up the wood and recycles that material. Demolition's changed a lot over the years, too. Hazardous and toxic materials. Sandry says that they removed the underground fuel storage tanks on the property, filed the tank closure reports, and there's no residuals causing contamination on the property. Architecture and visual appearance. This is what they're proposing. Not your typical car wash building. They tend to be flat roof buildings, most places that I see them. This will be a pitched roof building with a cupola on top to give it a more New England appearance rather than their Florida designs, which are all flat roof buildings. The materials the building is constructed of, it's called New Form, and it looks like plastic Legos that they put together on site. They put in rebar and fill it with concrete, and it provides a waterproof system that won't get moldy and it won't rot through the repeated exposure to water by the car wash. On the pitched roof is accomplished with wood trusses, and then we'll be using vinyl clapboards on the end of the building that match the gray color that they're proposing in the new form. And it's also gray roofing materials. So there's not a lot to it. There is a small office area which will have a window. The rest of the areas, these are the entrances to the tunnels, and this is an entrance into the office area and the mechanical room. I think that covered it. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Do any board members have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Carr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was a really comprehensive presentation, thank you. I guess I was trying to do the math about the vehicles, and on a peak day, I think you said 35 cars an hour, and, like Saturdays?
Yeah, 61 vehicle trips during the peak
Right.
hour on Saturday.
So 30 cars each, that's one
Essentially,
vehicle in
right.
and out, right?
Right.
So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, and then I know I've been around car washes too with my own cars, and I know on certain days, like after miserable weather like this, everyone comes out to get their car washed, and so there's really peak hours. And so the stacking of that is, it's just a little bit concerning to me, because if cars start to come in on Pearl Street, and then how many cars can you stack in the curved driveway?
Right.
And then what's the chance they start backing up on that one lane of Pearl Street? What happens to cars turning from west to Pearl into that west, the west lane? What happens there, and how's that all dealt
Sure.
with? And is there a chance they could back out onto West Street, even though I heard that you did a lot to move it further
When I-
away? Yeah.
When I first saw the numbers that the traffic engineer generated, he just goes to the ITE Trip Generation Manual, Institute of Transportation Engineers, and they collect studies from across the country. So hundreds of car wash studies were looked at, and they came up with this estimate of how many trips would be generated by each of the tunnels. So using that data, if you talk to the car wash companies, they say we need a minimum of 5 cars stacking outside the tunnel, which is only 105 feet. And so we have over 220 feet of stacking if you go all the way back to the property line. And it's 2 lanes of stacking through here. So we have the ability to easily stack 14 cars waiting to get into the tunnels. And doing the math, if it's 4.5 minutes per wash on average, then we're looking at 13 cars in an hour per tunnel during the peak hour. So that's 26 cars entering, and then 26 cars exiting. So that gets you up to 52. And then if there are 61 during the peak hour, and they hope there is, they're left in the stacking lanes. And there's more than enough room to stack the additional cars during that peak hour. The traffic engineer looked at queuing on Pearl Street, and I submitted the traffic report, which you should have a copy of. It's a 30-page document. Stephen Pernon and Associates, very experienced traffic engineer. I've done work with him for 15 years. I told you they had the video cameras set up so they could monitor queuing on Pearl Street. There is no queuing on West Street because this is just a throughway through here. Here's the intersection. And the queuing that occurred here, the most frequent queuing was 2 cars. The worst queuing they experienced during their review was 5 cars. And this is 125 feet, so that the queuing would extend all the way down to this curb cut location. This is as far away as we could get it and still meet the 3-foot setback that we need from this property line. So he felt that this would work even under the worst conditions. He made a recommendation. I don't know if staff wants us to do it or not. I don't know if it's necessary or not. But he recommended posting signs at this location, asking cars on Pearl Street not to block the intersection with the driveway. And I mean, I think Pearl Street is the most important factor here, not the entrance to the car wash, even though that's my client's entrance. And whether or not people would do that, I don't know. But even under the worst case, according to the traffic engineer, 5 cars was the worst that they witnessed. And on average, it's usually just 2 cars. So I don't think that it's gonna be a major problem.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
There were a couple letters that I was given copies of today by staff. Thank you. And I would like to address those. The first letter is from a woman.
Excuse me, I just
Ann-
want to tell everybody that the board, we do have copies of the letters on our
Oh, good.
desk.
Okay.
Yep.
So the first one is Ann Kramer,
Mm-hmm.
and she listed 7 different issues. She was concerned about 50 gallons of water being the typical wash water to wash 1 car. It's actually 35. And she was worried about it going into the city storm drain system, and it doesn't. It goes through our collection system, it's treated and discharged to the sewer system. Potential impact on the Ashwillet River. I think there would be a potential impact if we were discharging into the stormwater system and we're not. So I don't believe there's any issue with the Ashwillet River. The Ashwillet River is about 400 feet to the east of this location. Air pollution caused by soap and wax residue. I'm not sure how to address that. I think of soap as clean and good, and I don't know, maybe somebody's allergic to a scent in soap or something. I'm not sure what this is about, and I don't know how to answer that. Noise pollution, I think I've addressed. We think we can adequately mitigate by shutting them off after 8 o'clock at night. And then by the plantings and the solid fencing that we're using around the site. Light pollution from a 24-hour facility. I explained to you the very low light levels that we're proposing. I didn't, I should have gone out and measured what the light is today under those floodlights that are glaring. But it's much, much higher. I can't imagine what it is, but it's not 1 foot candle. Impact on residents using the rail trail, noise, odors, soap and wax in the air. The rail trail is located on Pearl Street, down where the railroad tracks used to be. It's maybe, 800 feet, 1,000 feet to the south of this site. I can't imagine the low traffic numbers that we're generating causing a problem for the rail trail. I share concerns about where the rail trail crosses Pearl Street. I've used that rail trail very frequently with my wife and my dog. And you need to be careful crossing Pearl Street because people do travel faster than 30 miles an hour. And the visibility in both directions, depending on the growth in the hedges by Antioch, isn't great. So that could be improved, I think, but I don't see that as our issue. And then she's concerned about increased traffic on Pearl Street, and I think I already addressed that with Steve Pernod's study. The second letter is from an abutter who's located here. Stephen Cady is the name. And of greatest concern, he's worried about the lighting, and I think he's gonna see a tremendous reduction in the amount of light that he sees coming from that property today. What we're proposing is a far, far lower level, so I think that'll be an improvement. Noise, I think shutting off the vacuums at 8 o'clock at night, hopefully that mitigates adequately for that. They're worried about the property value on their house. If you live in the Commerce District, you're gonna get commercial uses around you. And that doesn't necessarily lower the value of your property. Some people would feel it makes their property more valuable if it's in the middle of a commercial area being redeveloped as commercial. Then there's a different market. Instead of looking at it as a residence, they're gonna look at it as a commercial property. He's worried about traffic at the intersection with Pearl and West Street. I think I've addressed that. I guess he thinks the building is intrusive and unsightly. I think as the car wash building goes, This is one of the more attractive ones that I've ever seen. And it's the typical peaked roof design with a cupola. I think, especially from a distance, you look at that, it looks like it fits. It's not a flat roof plastic building like some car washes are today. So I think this addresses that issue appropriately. And finally, the 6-inch solid fence, I did address that. Our fencing, this is new fencing, which covers the extent of his property, and it meets the Aroma Joe fencing, which they also own and will maintain. So I think that's adequately addressed as well. But I don't know if he's here tonight, maybe he has more to say. And if there's no more questions, I'm done.
Jim, just for the record, what are the hours?
It's open 24 hours.
Right.
7 days a week, but the vacuums would only operate from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Evan, I believe you're going to do the presenting on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Let's see. As always, Mr. Fipper did a very thorough job of the proposal, so I will try to hit the highlights and make a couple other comments as we move through this project. So it is going to be a 2,000 square foot car wash building with 2 automatic car wash tunnels, a small office, and a mechanical room, all contained within the building itself. The 2 waiver requests, as described, are for the lighting reduction overnight and for the drive-through lane passing across the frontage of the building. So the applicant has stated in their narrative that both of the subject parcels are fully developed and their drainage patterns are well established. The properties currently allow water to flow across the pavement and lawn into the city's stormwater drains on both Pearl Street and West Street. The proposal will reduce lot coverage and incorporate on-site infiltration of stormwater runoff into the property. Stormwater from the northern half of the site will be directed into a grass swale parallel with West Street that drains into a shallow basin in the northeast corner of the property. The southern half of the site catch basins will collect stormwater flow and discharge to an infiltration basin located in the southeast corner of the property. The submitted stormwater report states that the post-development conditions will have no adverse impacts to downstream abutters due to the stormwater runoff from this proposal, and there is no significant change in the stormwater pattern pre- and post-development on the site. Let's see. In regards to sediment and erosion control, the grading and drainage plan shows the installation of silt fencing around the perimeter of the site and includes a stabilized construction entrance. At the location of the permanent site access point on Pearl Street, silt sock is proposed to protect the catch basins on site during construction. I will like to note that we did have one silting incident during the construction of the Aroma Joe's project next door. It appears that there was a stockpile of clean fill to be used as part of their stormwater detention system that ran onto the abutting property. Mr.
Katie?
Thank you. He brought it to our attention. He sent us some photographs of it. It was a very small amount of silting. We contacted the contractor for that project, and he immediately offered to come around the corner and to clean it up after his property. We believe it to be a sort of a one-off. It was a temporary pile that was about to be used, and it was an unexpectedly severe storm event that caused a very small amount of runoff.